Morning, children. So, in today's class, we are going to learn about the third chapter, which is Jainism and Buddhism. So, let us learn initially what is Jainism, and later we will proceed to Jain and Buddhism. So, as per the reduced syllabus, the introductory part of this chapter has been removed, and only the reasons for the rise of Jainism and Buddhism, and who are its founders, and other information is only given in the syllabus. So according to that syllabus, I am going to describe this chapter. So India had a uh, very flourishing Vedic society, right? So which raised to Hinduism and all such concepts. Such a society was very prevalent during the Vedic days. And what happened to this society, and why slowly another religions like Jainism and Buddhism got dominated over this Vedic religion called Hinduism. So what was the reasons behind that? Why these religions have developed or why they have emerged, in spite of a powerful religion called Hinduism? So the following factors favored the rise and growth of Jainism and Buddhism. So there are certain factors. What are those factors? Reaction against ritualism. So, what do you mean by ritual? These are the religious practices that were prevalent in Vedic times. So, religious ceremonies by then had become very expensive. That means during Vedic times, and because of the impact of Vedic times, people or the priest have developed a very costly ritualistic process. That means the way they approach God, the way they preach God, and it was very, very expensive. So beyond, which was beyond the means of ordinary people. Ordinary people could not spend so much money and they cannot perform those rituals. So some priests hardly realized the sufferings of the common man. So common man, if he wants to go God and preach the God, it was very difficult for him because they made it very costly. And the preaching and devotion to God was very made costly by the priests. So when priests made it costly, it became difficult for common man to preach God. So this was an important cause that gave rise to faiths that were simple and inexpensive. So people started looking for a religion, or as the already existing ritual practices were very costly and very complicated, people started looking for very simple and very inexpensive rituals, or without any rituals also. So where this Jainism and Buddhism were successful in giving such simple and inexpensive rituals. And corruption in the religion. So corruption creep into religious practices. In order to extract money, the priest encouraged ordinary people to perform yajnas and conduct household rites beyond their means. That means the priests, who were the uppermost caste like the Brahmins, they were the dominating people in society in terms of religion. So what this priest did, in order to extract money, that means to get money from people, these priests, they encouraged common people to perform certain yajnas which are very costly. The things required to perform a particular yajna is very costly. So they used to always refer such kind of yajnas to common people. And also if any household ceremonies are there, that also these priests made them very expensive and costly, which slowly these priests, just for the sake of money, they were trying to do this kind of money practices, or they used to suggest some kind of expensive practices for people. Even a household ceremony you take, or you take any yajna, if a common man has to perform, just these priests have tried to extract money from them by suggesting very costly things. And Kshatriya rulers protested against the dominance of such practices. The Kshatriyas, who were the ruling class in society, they just objected the practices that were introduced by priests, because these priests, in terms of their suggesting these rituals and other religious practices, they were trying to dominate the society, which the ruling class, so-called Kshatriyas, didn't like. So the common man could not reconcile to this attitude of the priest. So even common people, as well as the ruling class, they could not understand why these priests are suggesting such costly religious rituals and other things, because these people are greedy of money now. These priests have become greedy of money. So just for their money's sake, they used to torture people like this, or they used to refer such costly yagnas and household ceremonies. So both the ruling class as well as common people, they could not tolerate the priests and their methods. And both Jainism and Buddhism was founded by two Kshatriya princes. So by this you can understand that how this priestly class was dominating the society. So within the Kshatriya class, which was ruling class, they did not like the domination of Brahmins. They came out, and both Jainism and Buddhism was founded by a ruling class or the Kshatriya class people. So here the Kshatriyas didn't like, so they came, and the Kshatriya kings themselves could not bear the rituals practices of Brahmins. So one among the Kshatriya kings became the founders of Jainism and Buddhism. Such corruption practices were very large in those days. And the rigid caste system. So the division of society into Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras has become rigid. What do you mean by rigid caste system here? You all know that the society was divided into four Varnas, but these Varnas were very rigid, that the Brahmins never encouraged, they never liked to get married with Kshatriyas, or the Kshatriyas never liked to get married with Brahmins. So it was like vice versa, no? There were no intercaste marriages, and a person of one caste could not become a member of other caste. So there were restrictions on the basis of caste in food, drinks, and marriage. So interchange of caste was impossible. So people were not allowed. If suppose the Brahmins, no, they never allowed the lower caste people to come into temples. Also, they never allowed them to drink water in the wells of their places. So this kind of partiality, when came between the upper caste, and they tried to dominate the lower caste, and the caste system has become, when inequality is raised between the varnas or caste, the caste have become so rigid that they tried to become, they tried to reserve themselves. I mean, they tried to become very preservative of their caste, so very reservative. So this led to rigidity of caste system. That is, no intercaste marriages used to happen, and no food and drinks were exchanged between these. So certain kind of foods were not taken by one caste, other foods were taken by other caste. So this kind of rigidity entered into caste system, which also made common people to think that this Vedic religion is no longer possible for them to follow. Hence, they were looking for Jainism and Buddhism. So this rigid caste system just now I have discussed. So this is again a repetition. So I'll proceed to the another cause for the rise of Jainism and Buddhism, which is difficult language. So what was the language that was used by the Vedic Aryans? It was mostly Sanskrit. So all the Vedic literature, you take any Puranas, you take any Upanishads, take any Vedas, they were all written in Sanskrit language, because the Aryans, educated Aryans, they consider Sanskrit as their sacred language. That means very holy language. So the priestly class give discourses and chanted mantras in this language, which common people found difficult to understand. So in terms of language, always Sanskrit, which was a complex language, was used. All the Vedic literature was composed in Sanskrit language. So when all the literature was in Sanskrit language, which is very complicated, only the priestly class could understand that, because they were the teachers in those days. So only priestly class and their generations used to know. Other class, they had no idea what kind of language is this literature speaking about. So when the language became a barrier, people could not understand their own scriptures, and they could not understand their own literature. So they felt that literature and scripts is very difficult to understand. So many people began to look for an alternative religion that could understand better. So when language itself became, so suppose if a common man wants to read his own religious scripture, and if it is in Sanskrit, who only the priest can read and tell them, then the common people felt it as a very disadvantage. So they always want to resort on the priestly class, and the priestly class never give this kind of discourses to other class. So this kind of language and difficulty made people to look for an alternative religion that gives them a very simple language and very simple way of learning. And coming to the political situation. So in the 6th century BC, Magadha was ruled by Bimbisara and later by Ajatashatru. So Magadha and all were Mahajanapadas. We learnt in our Vedic society that there were Gramas and later Vishas, and then we studied about Janas. Such Janas together formed Mahajanapadas. So Magadha was one such Mahajanapada which was ruled by a famous king called Bimbisara. After Bimbisara, this Magadha was even ruled by Ajatashatru, who was another famous ruler. So these rulers were liberal and tolerant. So they too free from Brahmanic influence and condemned certain social evils in their kingdom. So kings like Bimbisara and Ajatashatru, who belongs to this Kshatriya class, they were very liberal in thinking. That means they also felt that this Brahmanic uh, ideology of religion was very complicated for people. So they condemned the social evils in society that was brought together by this priestly class. The priestly class, just to extract money, they introduced many systems in society which were like social evils. And these social evils were outrightly rejected by the Magadha rulers Bimbisara and Ajatashatru. So when the opportunity came, these Kshatriya rulers of this Magadha, they patronized Jainism and Buddhism because they no longer wanted to uh, be under the Brahmanical domination in society. So they themselves, being kings, they patronized other religions like Jainism and Buddhism. And coming to the agricultural economy as a reason. So killing of animals to perform sacrifices was against the interest of farmers in Gangetic Valley. So when these Aryans settled in Gangetic Valley and the later Vedic period started, there were a lot of sacrifice of animals started. So if they want to perform any yajna or if they wanted to go for a war, simply this priestly class introduces sacrifice of animals. So when more and more animals were used for sacrifices, and it became difficult for the farmers because there was a deficiency of animals because of these sacrifices. There was shortage of animals. Generally, for farmers, these animals and cattle were used for tilling the land, for manure and other purposes. But many sacrifices made in the name of rituals, which were introduced by this Brahmanical class, was not liked by farmers. Because in the name of a ritual or an yajna or sacrifice, these priests, they allowed many sacrifice of and killing of animals. So farmers didn't like the killing of animals as they are helping them for livelihood. They didn't like it. So the use of iron had made the animal-drawn ploughing popular. So by this time, iron was discovered, and iron ploughs were made, and with these iron ploughs should be dragged by the cattle. And if these cattle, in the name of religious sacrifices, were killed, then the farmers are at the loss. So which the farmers didn't like. So such farmers needed a religion that would give protection to animals. So both Jainism and Buddhism preached non-violence and were against animal sacrifices. So this Buddhism and Jainism, they outrightly rejected violence and killing of animals. So naturally, the farmers shifted their religion from this Vedic religion to the Jainism and Buddhism. And it agricultural economy, that means people's livelihood dependent on agriculture made farmers to protect animals instead of sacrifices. But this priestly class were always saying to sacrifice animals in the name of some yajna or something. So finally the farmers didn't like it, so they shifted to other religions. So let us see what is Jainism. So here the doctrines of the Jains were preached by saints or acharyas called Tirthankaras. So what do you mean by doctrines of Jains? That means they are the set of beliefs that Jains believe. So the followers of Jainism are called Jains. So these Jains, they preached They are preached by acharyas, that means teachers. So there is no concept of God and other things here. There were only teachers for this religion. So the teachers in Jainism were called Tirthankaras, and there were 23 Tirthankaras preceded Mahavira. So before Mahavira, there were almost 23 Tirthankaras. Who are these Tirthankaras? They were the saints or teachers in Jainism. So these Tirthankaras, there are total 24 in number, and 24th one was Mahavira. So before Mahavira, there were 23 such Jain saints. And the first Tirthankara was Rishabhadeva, and 23rd was Parshvanath. So the first Tirthankara was Rishabhadev, the 23rd was Parshvanath, and the 24th was Mahavira. So among this, Mahavira was very famous Jain teacher or Jain saint. Let us learn about Vardhamana Mahavira. So he was the 24th and the last of the Tirthankaras. So among the teachers or among the saints of the Jainism, so Vardhamana Mahavira was the last and was the 24th and the last Tirthankara, and he made Jainism popular and systematic. Before him also there was Jainism, but it was not as popular as Vardhamana during the time of Vardhamana. It was because of Vardhamana Mahavira Jainism became very famous and very popular. That is why Mahavira is considered as the founder of Jainism. Vardhaman Mahavira took the principles and uh, the aspects of Jainism very strongly into public. Hence, he was considered as the founder of Jainism. So let us see now what some introduction of Mahavira. He was born in Kundalagrama near Vaishali in Bihar. So Vardhaman Mahavira, he was born in Kundagrama. It is near Vaishali in Bihar. So in second half of 6th century BC. His father was a chief of Kshatriya clan and his mother was Trishala. Okay, so she belongs to Licchavis. So by this we understand that Mahavira belonged to a Kshatriya Varna. So in those days, you know that the society had four Varnas. Among that, Vardhaman Mahavira, he belonged to a Kshatriya Varna. And Mahavira received his early education in all specialized branches. He is said to have been very brave and to have saved his colleague from dangers. So from childhood, Vardhamana Mahavira was very brave, and he was even brave enough to save his fellow friends, childhood friends, whenever there are dangers. So the kind of bravery and the kind of you know things he showed, he was referred as Mahavira. So his friends and other people used to call him Mahavira. So at the time of his birth, his father's kingdom was prosperous. So just now we studied the introduction, that is where he was born, who were his parents, and then why he was called Mahavira. Because he was very brave enough in childhood and he saved a lot of his friends from the dangers. And when Mahavira was a boy, small boy, his father's kingdom was prosperous. So the boy was called Vardhamana, that is prosperity. So his father, because of his boy Vardhaman, because of his boy Mahavira, the kingdom was very prosperous, rich, wealthy, and it was very good. So because of this, they thought that the boy was responsible for that prosperity of kingdom, and they called him as Vardhamana. That means a person who brings prosperity to that kingdom. He got absorbed into spiritual pursuits from early childhood. He was married to Yashoda, and this was done in order to divert his attention from the asceticism. See, from childhood, this Mahavira was having certain kind of attraction towards spiritualism, sainthood, and learning about spirituality and all. So his father and what other parents, I mean, his parents did what? They made him married at an early age to a girl named Yashoda, and so that they thought that this man would divert from the spiritual aspects and continue looking after the kingdom as a Kshatriya king. But At the age of 30, after the death of his parents, Mahavira renounced the world and roamed about as an ascetic practicing. So, but the spiritual instinct in Mahavira could not be stopped by him. Once he reached the age of 30, unfortunately he lost both of his parents and there were nobody to stop his spiritual inquiry. So what he did, he left all the worldly affairs, he left family, everything, and he started roaming as a saint to various places in India. So if you see, this is the statue of Mahavira, who was a Jain saint. So Vardhaman Mahavira, almost he was 12 years he was roaming continuously. So he was trying to learn different cultures, different people he met, and he was spending his life very tough for almost 12 years. He silently endured all the hardships. So whatever difficulties he faced across his path on his journey, he faced them with a very silent attitude. At last he obtained the supreme knowledge and he subdued his desires and became Jinnah, or the conqueror. So when he wondered what was the reason for all happiness and other things, in his journey he attained the supreme knowledge. So through meditation or various other means, he attained the supreme knowledge. Once he attained that supreme knowledge, he gave up all his desires. He became free of his desires and he was referred as Jinnah. From then onwards, Mahavira was referred as Jinnah or the conqueror. So he was the conqueror of all his desires. And his followers came to be called Jinnahs or Jains, that is, who have conquered their desires. So as Mahavira conquered his desires and became a Jinnah, later, because of his teachings and inspiration, many people followed him and they are also referred as Jinnahs or Jains, are the conquerors of the desires. So what are the preachings of Mahavira? So what did he preach? So after becoming the Jinnah, Mahavira spent his life in preaching. So whatever knowledge he attained through his spiritual things, he started preaching them to common people. He gave his first sermon, that means his first speech, his first what do you call preaching, he gave at Mount Vipul, situated in Rajagriha, the capital of Magadha. So in the capital city of Magadha, he went on to a mountain and there he gave his first sermon, that means his first discourse about his knowledge, what spiritual knowledge he attained, what is the method to acquire happiness, all such things he gave a speech there. And he was now a Kevalin, that means all-knowing person or Lord Mahavira. So when people started understanding his speeches and his knowledge, they called him as an all-knowing person. That means he knows everything. That means he is almost a Lord. So people started considering him as a god. He had a large number of followers. He preached at various centers like Avanti, Koshala, Anga, Mithila, Champa, Videha, and Vaishali. So these are the places within the Magadha kingdom, and he visited all these places and he started preaching his teachings. Lord Mahavira attained salvation at the age of 72 at Pavapuri in Bihar. So at the time of his death, he had about some 14,000 followers. So finally, at the age of 72 years, Mahavira attained salvation. That means the final stage of his life, that is death. So where he died at Pavapuri in Bihar. Okay, so this was his death place, and by the time he died, he has almost 14,000 followers. So let us now try to understand what are the main teachings of Jainism. So Jainism did not accept the authority of Vedas. So the Vedic religion was completely rejected by Jains or the Jainism. They preached five oaths. That means they have to make their promises. That means five promises they have to make. And it is said that only the fifth oath was added by Mahavira. So among these five oaths or promises, four were given by the remaining Tirthankaras and the fifth one was added by Vardhaman Mahavira. What are these five oaths? One is Ahimsa. So any Jain, any person who follows this Jainism, he has to practice ahimsa or non-violence. And asteya, that means not stealing. They should not be greedy for others' things or others' money. They should never steal anyone's things. That was another promise that they have to take up. So one is not doing violence, the other thing is not stealing others' things, and one is practicing satya. That means one who is a one who belongs or one who follows Jainism, they should never tell a lie. And aparigraha, that means not possessing property. So any Jain family, they should not have. That means here you can understand that they should not be more greedy about the worldly things. And here another promise that they have to take is brahmacharya. One who becomes a Jain or Jina, they have to practice chastity here. So, so brahmacharya means practicing chastity. That means not not going for marriage and such other things. So these are all the five promises that one has to take up if he wants to live like a Jina. And non-injury to living beings, especially to humans, animals, plants, and insects, is important in Jain philosophy. So overall, you take non-violence is very much given importance in Jain philosophy. So they should not harm any animals, humans, plants, and insects. So according to Mahavira, violence is of three kinds. So according to Mahavira, violence is of three kinds. What are they? Physical violence, like killing, causing injury or pain, and violence in words, and mental violence. So what is violence in words? That means usage of harsh and abusing language. That also comes under violence for Mahavira. What is mental violence? So mental violence means ill will towards others. That means treating somebody very less inferior and making them feel very bad. This kind of violence is also called mental violence. One is physical violence. According to Mahavira, there is three kinds of violence. Physical violence, that means killing physically some living being. Violence in words, that means using harsh and abusing language. And mental violence means treating somebody very inferior or very low. So with this kind of feeling, that is called the mental violence. So Jains believed in sanctity of life or the right of every living being to live. So that means they consider that all living beings have a right to live. It is nobody can make other living being inferior and they can kill them. So Jain philosophy speaks much about non-violence. These doctrines or beliefs came to regarded as five O's, which every Jain is supposed to take. So every person who belongs or who follows this Jainism, they need to take all these five O's or promises. Then comes the nine truths. So besides the five O's or promises that Jains have to take, there are other doctrines or beliefs of Jainism. They are expected to have the knowledge of these nine truths. So every Jain has to make these five O's. Along with five O's, they have to have this knowledge of nine truths. So they have to know about these truths. What are those? According to Jain philosophy, the knowledge of these nine truths is essential and only renunciation is the shortest way to salvation. So the knowledge of these nine truths is essential and renunciation, that means making changes, is only the shortest way to salvation. So So one who has to understand this kind of knowledge of nine truths and all, they have to renunciate. That means they have to give away all the worldly affairs and other things so that they can easily reach to salvation or the ultimate knowledge stage. So these nine truths have a central place in the philosophy of Jainism. So the nine truths are Jiva, that means the living things. They have to recognize the living things. Ajiva means non-living things. Punya means doing good things, Pap means sin, and Ashrav means good deeds. That means doing good things. Okay. So here Punya means results of good things, Ashrav means doing good things, and Sanvar means hindrances in the way of karma. So what do you mean by hindrances or sanvar means there will be a lot of obstacles or there will be a lot of barriers in achieving many things in Jainism. So what are those obstacles that are all covered under sanvar? And bandha means bondage, having relationship and all. And nirzara means destruction of karmas. So it's the destruction of the actions. There will be certain things which destroy our actions. So that comes as the nirzara and moksha, which is the last stage called salvation or understanding the ultimate truth. So these nine truths, every Jain must have knowledge about living things, non-living things, the result of good things, doing good things, what are the obstacles in doing their actions, and what kind of relations they have, how they are bounded with those things, and how the destruction of their actions will happen, and how they should reach the ultimate truth. All such things are covered in the nine truths, and these nine truths play a central position or a very important position in the belief system of Jainism. So, what are the doctrines of Jainism or belief systems? The first doctrine is called Tri Ratnas, that means three Ratnas. So what do you mean by Three Ratnas here? Mahavira preached that the ultimate goal of man is to attain freedom from worldly bonds or to attain moksha. So it can be obtained by following Three Ratnas or three jewels. So Mahavira considered that anybody who want to attain the salvation or the moksha, they must be following these three jewels, these three jewel-like principles. Okay, so he compared them like very big. I mean, they're like they're almost like jewelry. So if they can, they're like almost very precious stones. So like precious stones in jewelry, these three are very important for a Jain person to attain the salvation or moksha. What are those three jewelry? I mean, what are those three ratnas? One is right faith, another is right knowledge, and the other is right conduct. So faith, right faith means having trust on the beliefs or whatever the teachings given by their Tirthankaras. Having right knowledge. So whatever knowledge that has been passed by their teachers, they should have a correct understanding of them. That comes as right knowledge. And right conduct means right behavior. So once you gain some knowledge and you have faith on something, you should also behave in a very correct manner. So these three will become the three Ratnas are the three jewels of Jainism. They inspire a true Jain to have faith in 24 Tirthankaras, those who guided men and women across to acquire knowledge from their sermons and to lead a good life. That means these three jewels, okay, so they'll inspire. Whom they'll inspire? A true Jain. So a true Jain who learns these three jewels, what they'll do, they'll have faith in the 24 Tirthankaras who are their teachers, and also to acquire knowledge from their sermons. That means sermons means their teachings. Whatever the Tirthankaras have taught and whatever their teachings are there, how to lead good life, all such things were learned through these three jewels. And what is karma? This is another philosophy of Jain, their belief system. The Jains believe in karma, theory of Hinduism, and that one should be responsible for one's own karma or actions. So, like the Vedic religion called Hinduism, Jains also believed in the concept of karma. That means one should be responsible for one's own actions. Whatever you do, you are responsible for your action, your thing. So that was also believed by the Jains. So good deeds alone liberate a man from the cycle of life and death. And they believe that if you do good things, they will definitely make you free from the cycle of life and death. And the other thing is equality. So he laid stress on equality between men as well as between men and women. So Jainism considered equality between men and women. Universal brotherhood, that means between different religions, Jainism wants uh, peace and very good friendly relations. He considered all men equal irrespective of their caste or creed. So here men refers to people. So Mahavira said that irrespective of their caste, everybody is equal in this or on this earth. He believed that the virtuous deeds could achieve ultimate salvation or nirvana. So that means one should perform certain things so that they can lead to this kind of salvation. And all living beings, from the tiny insect to highest form of life, should be shown compassion. That means they should be everybody should have some kind of kindness, some kind of humbleness, and some kind of compassion towards the other lives that are existing on this planet. Not only that, being human beings, you are very superior. Don't consider yourself like that. Have some kind of kindness, some kind of humbleness, and some kind of respect towards other living forms on this earth also. So, like this kind of principle of equality was also a strong belief in Jainism and eternal soul. So Mahavira believed in the immortality of the soul or Atma. So that means which is also a Hinduist concept. I mean, it's a Vedic religious concept which they believed. The form of soul. So they believed in soul, and he said that the body lies but not the soul. So even the body dies, the soul remains immortal. It can never have death. And what is salvation? Like Hindus, Jains believe in moksha or freedom from the cycle of birth and rebirth. So, as per Hindu mythological or Hindu philosophy, they believe that moksha means suppose if somebody attains moksha, they won't take rebirth again. So, once for all, their life will end and they will be liberated from the birth again, having all the human problems and all. So, they're once for all free. So this kind of salvation is also believed by Jains. This can be achieved by leading an austere life based on non-violence and self-denial. So that means a person who can liberate from all the worldly affairs. He can, or one who resorts to non-violence. That means who makes himself committed to non-violence, and self-denial means that means always thinking about selfishness, thinking that I am great and I am having this much things, I am so knowledgeable. So if somebody comes out of that selfish or self feeling, and also if they commit themselves to non-violence, then they can reach to salvation or the moksha. To attain salvation, it is necessary to practice the Triratnas of right faith, right knowledge, and right action. So, these Triratnas would help any Jain to attain the salvation. So, this is about the salvation concept and beliefs in Jainism. So, another belief system in Jainism called belief in penance. So, what do you mean by penance? That means to die of starvation. So any Jain who wanted to strictly commit to the principles of Jainism, they can reach the salvation stage by starvation. So moksha can be achieved by starving themselves to death. And this kind of penance or this kind of difficult life is called Santhara or Sallekana. So this was considered as a virtue. So here you can call that penance as tapasya. So somebody who continuously practices this tapasya, sitting in meditation and all, so they have to die of starvation there. So somebody sits in penance, that means tapasya, they should not worry about the hunger and thirst and all such things, and they should die like that only. So this practice is called santara or sallekana. So and it was considered as a virtue. That means that means she is dying like that out of starvation and doing such very difficult tapasya is called virtue. Virtue here means it is called their dharma. So that means it is the dharma of every Jain. It is the responsibility or it is the kind of moral responsibility for a Jain to die of starvation, so to reach salvation, which is called Sallekana. So they lay so much stress on severe penance. That means they have to undergo a very tough kind of tapasya. So they have to make very tough tapasya, and very few people could lead such an austere life. Austere life means very tough life. So such performing of tapasya with like starvation and all, very few can do that. Not everyone. So this explains why Jainism had few followers. So because of such very tough practices like austerity and like starving to death and all, there were very few followers to Jainism. And how this Jainism got spread? It had royal patronage. That means the Kshatriya kings, because Vardhaman Mahavira was a Kshatriya king, and he doesn't like the Brahmanical domination also. So he came out, he went on his own journey, and he could realize the knowledge, and he founded this great religion. But slowly this religion was liked by even other Kshatriya kings. So instead of following Hinduism, they started following Jainism. So easily it could spread around the many kingdoms because many kings liked it. So Koshala, Magadha, Mithila, Champa, the kings of these kingdoms, they liked it and they adapted it and they also made their people to follow it. So and even to other parts of the country, this religion spread. They founded monasteries headed by learned munis. So monastery is a place where these Jain monks live and they practice their religion there, their prayers, their tapasya and all such things. And these monasteries were headed by some Jain saints or munis or monks. They lived an austere life. Austere life means very tough life. They were given example to people to follow. I told you what are the tough practices in Jainism, right? Starving to death and all. So these monks who live in monasteries, they tried to lead such a difficult life, and Jainism was patronized by business community more. So it's very good. I mean, in a very advanced way, this spread to even the business communities. And in South India, Jainism was patronized by the Rashtrakuta and Chalukya kings. So they are the dynasties which were ruling the southern Indian kingdoms, and they also adopted Jainism. Later, Jainism became a dominant religion in Karnataka and it spread to Odisha, Rajasthan, and Gujarat slowly. So this was how they spread in southern India. So what were the causes for the spread of Jainism? So how this religion was easily spreading to what do you call to people? Why? What was the reasons that we will discuss? Local dialect. That means Mahavira adapted language of common people, that is Prakrit language, instead of Sanskrit to preach his doctrines. So whenever Vardhaman Mahavira wanted to give his teachings, he used to speak in a local language called Prakrit, which many people used to understand. So instead of Sanskrit, Vardhaman Mahavira used the local language to say all the teachings. So it made easy for the people to understand and many people also to follow it. That was one important reason. And second reason was royal patronage. That means many Kshatriya kings they adapted this religion and they followed it because Chandragupta among this Chandragupta Maurya is said to have been converted into Jainism after his ruling. So he was a great Mauryan king and he was founder. So such a great king, he adapted and followed Jainism and he even responsible for spread of Jainism. So in 5th century AD, Chalukyas and Rashtrakutas also patronized Jainism in southern India. So these kingdoms, they are all Kshatriya kingdoms. They are the ruling class people. So they like this kind of religion and they encouraged people also to follow like rulers like Kharavela, the ruler of Kalinga, helped in the spread of Jainism in eastern India. So even North India, Chandragupta Maurya, Chalukyas and Rashtrakutas in southern India, and Kharavela, the ruler of Kalinga. So he spreaded the Jainism in eastern part of India. Thus, Kshatriyas or the king's patronage, encouragement made Jainism to spread. And the saints. So who are these saints? People who devoted to this Jainism. like Kalkacharya, who lived in Ujjain, made it a center of Jainism, and another saint, Bhadrabahu, took Jainism to Karnataka. So there were some great people even after Vardhaman Mahavira, like Kalkacharya and Bhadrabahu. These two people throughout India they traveled and they started spreading this Jainism, which led to spread of Jainism and appeal to people. People found the religion attractive as it was based on austerity, simplicity, and spirituality. On one hand, the religion is very simple, it looks very difficult to follow, which is an attractive factor for them, and spirituality. That means there is a lot of simple faith in God. There is no God, there is no much kind of rituals, nothing like that. So the religious can be very simple. So this attracted people more. And what happened to this religion? Division into two sects, that means two groups. So during the time when Bhadrabahu took Jainism to Karnataka, there arose differences between him and Stulabhadra, who was based in Magadha. So there were two important leaders in Jainism by name Stulabhadra and Bhadrabahu. So Bhadrabahu, he had a belief that the Magadha would vanish with a big famine. So what he did, he took away all the followers of Jainism and he reached Karnataka. This was not liked by Stulabhadra. He considered the Bhadrabahu statement as very blind belief. So differences came between Bhadrabahu and Stulabhadra, and Bhadrabahu took away some followers who followed him to Karnataka. And in the first Jain council held around 300 BC, these differences came to surface. Slowly, Jains divided into two groups. So when differences increased between Bhadrabahu and Stulabhadra, their followers also got separated and made Jainism split into two groups. One is Svetambaras, or the white clads, that means people who wear the white dress. So one group was called Svetambaras. So this Svetambaras was this was they were ruled. I mean they were under the leadership of Stulabhadra. So they never moved away from Magadha. They stayed in Magadha only. They wore white clothes, covered their faces with small white cloth to avoid killing the tiniest of insects or the germs. So how the Svetambaras live? They wear white clothes, okay, and they cover with a small mask, a white cloth, because they feel that the microorganisms may go inside their mouth and they get killed, which they feel as violence. So they don't even want that to happen. So they tie even white cloths, wear white clothes, and they tie a white cloth around their face, and they fasted but did not believe in extreme penance and austerity. So they used to do fasting and all, but did not believe in extreme penance. That means the extreme tapasya which Vardhamana and others did. They never believed in such things. And austerity life means that having this kind of tough life. They never had faith on such tough and very tough tapasya life and all. But they were very simple. They used to fast sometimes and they used to remain like that. The second group was Digambaras. They followed by Bhadrabahu. So Bhadrabahu, so the Digambaras, these are the other group of people who were led by Bhadrabahu. So they were sky clad and did not believe in covering their bodies. So they believed that they are like sky. So nothing can cover up sky, right? So they believed in such kind of philosophical concepts. So according to Digambaras, living without clothes signified a detachment from worldly pleasures was their practice. So they feel that the sky itself is their clothes. No need for them to cover again, with some kind of cloth material and all. And that shows their detachment. Even not wearing clothes, they feel that it is a detachment from worldly pleasure. So they feel that wearing clothes is a pleasure which the world prefers. So they don't want even that pleasure. So they even lived like Digambaras. That means they used to live without any clothes. According to them, one could avoid killing life forms by not wearing clothes because while washing clothes, many germs would get killed. They were orthodox followers of Mahavira. So you can imagine the kind of things I'm discussing here. So if they wear clothes and if they try to wash, that also kills the germs, so which they feel as violence. So orthodox followers of Mahavira, that means whatever Mahavira has said, everything they follow by word. They won't even deviate a single word from what Mahavira has said. They kept long fast and led an austere life. So longer hours, longer days they used to fast and they used to lead a very, very tough life. And the impact of Jainism. They believed in the spirit of accommodation and equality. So, see, what do you mean by spirit of accommodation here and equality? So, they believed that, so these people, they believed that spirit of accommodation, that means they should have always compromise for things. They should not always proceed with their desires and all. And they should always have faith on equality. So, its approach was very pragmatic. It therefore had a profound impact, means very strong impact on the political and social life of people. So they believed in compromise of using things, not to have all the worldly things, and to follow equality. So people used to like this religion very much. And what that was, there were many impacts of this religion. What was political impact? So in early stages, the success was more remarkable than that of Buddhism. So compared to Buddhism, this religion was very successful in its initial days. However, it was mainly the Kshatriyas who took this new faith. As a result, they lost their warlike instincts. It is one of the reasons why Jains did not try to build any political empire of their own. So, politically, only Kshatriyas used to follow this religion, Jainism. So, because of this Jainism and all, they could not do warlike things because Jainism always preaches non-violence. So, because of these reasons, I mean, not having wars, slowly the Jains could not establish for them a particular kingdom. That is why politically they were not very stabilized. Okay, because of their actions, like the non-violence and other strict methods, they could not build for them some empire or some place because those were against their principles. That was impact for them on political, social, and religious impact. They discarded the system of casteism, shunned rituals, and encouraged social service. So caste system was outrightly rejected. No rituals were followed. That means no practices. And social service was given importance. What kind of language and literature these people were using? See, the people used Prakrit as a literature language. I told you, Prakrit is a common man's language in those days. So this language was used for writing their scriptures. So another local languages were also used for writing their scriptures. And all the scriptures of Jainism were compiled in 6th century at Vallabhi in Gujarat. Whatever the Jain teachers have told, all those teachings were written in Prakrit language, and in Vallabhi, a place in Gujarat, they were all got together. They were the Angas, that means the 12 books containing teachings of Mahavira. The Jain scriptures were called, the literature is called Angas. So these Angas are having 12 books. So here, what do these Angas have? Teachings of Mahavira and a great source of knowledge, as I said. And the Mahapurana was also a literature. It was composed by Jinasena, and this was he was another important Jain saint. And Kalpa Sutra was a literature compiled by Bhadrabahu and Ratnamalika by Rashtrakuta rulers. So the Kshatriya kings who patronized this Jainism, they wrote many literature in very common languages, as I said here, like Mahapurana, Kalpasutra, Ratnamalika, etc. So Ratnamalika was written by a Rashtrakuta ruler who belongs to southern India by name Amogha So these are all the literary works or the literary works given by the Jain people. And Jain literature is in Ardhamagadi and Prakrit dialects. That means they are the local languages. So Ardhamagadi was also a local language, and Prakrit was also used as a local language by many people. So majority of the literature was in local languages. It highlights the value of ahimsa. So this literature, if you look at the overview, it highlights the non-violence. From the writings of the Jains, India, especially from 6th to 4th century basic, can be reconstructed. So these literary works which were written by the Jains, they help us to reconstruct our past history, especially from 6th to 4th century. What were the developments in India can be known to historians very easily through these books written by these Jains. Understood? So that is the importance of the Jain literature. One is ahimsa, and the other thing is we can reconstruct our past. Coming to the art and architecture of the Jains. See, the Jains have constructed temples and monasteries. Monasteries are places where the Jain monks live and they try to preach whatever the teachings have been taught to them. So temples are places where Vardhamana Mahavira's idols were there. So Jain relics are found in Kandagiri and Udayagiri caves in Odisha. So there were some cave temples built. So in Udayagiri and Kandagiri places of which state? Odisha state. So they constructed hundreds of dharmashalas, opened several orphanages, supported many charitable institutions. So in terms of architecture, the Jain architecture can be known from their temples, their monasteries, their dharmashalas, and their orphanages, and their charitable institutions. That means where they can help can be given to poor and needy. So these all will reveal the architectural uh, brilliance of Jains. The gigantic structures of Bahubali, Gomatheshwara at Shravanabelagola, and Karakala in Karnataka are good examples of Jain and art and architecture. So Bahubali Gomatheshwara statue, or the Bahubali statue at Shravanabelagola. So this is a place where Bhadrabahu settled and he practiced the Digambara kind of Jainism. So here the Gomateshwara statue is present, and that shows the height of the statue is so big, you know, that shows their architectural skill. And the Dilwara temples at Mount Abu in Rajasthan. You can see this as a Dilwara temple in Mount Abu in Rajasthan. You can see the architectural skill, the kind of construction they made, the kind of you know, this is different from Hindu kind of temples, right? So that shows this unique architectural skill for them. So in Rajasthan especially. So in Jodhpur and Jain Tower at Chittor are famous Jain architectural places. And the most famous Jain holy place is Palitana in Gujarat, which has more than 800 temples. So Palitana in Gujarat is the holy place for Jains. Jains holy place is Palitana in Gujarat, where almost there are 800 temples of Jain. So you can imagine how much holy place is for them. So how such a great religion Jainism declined, how it was not accepted for many years, why it became a very less practiced religion in course of time, that we will see. It preached rigid austerity. That means a very tough life is suggested through Jain scriptures, which people was not liking so much. So, and Buddhism was also existed at this time. And the theory of ahimsa was extended even to wearing of clothes. So this, uh, I mean, what you call getting away with clothes is also something people which didn't like. A tough way of lifestyle is one aspect. Buddhism is also very spreading fastly in those days. That is another aspect. And ahimsa, in terms of ahimsa, leaving even clothes was not liked by many people. So they were not showing interest to follow Jainism, and it did not spread to foreign countries. So it did not have missionary effort. That means these Jain monks or Jain followers, they never tried to show interest to spread this religion outside country. They were always within the country, so it could not spread, and finally it could limit itself to Magadha and I know southern part India and some eastern parts of India, and it could not spread throughout the world. Jainism did not get royal patronage from contemporary rulers. In contrast, Buddhism received a large-scale support from Ashoka, Harsha, and Kanishka. So, if you take the patronage, that means encouragement. There was some encouragement from the ruling class, but compared to Buddhism, Jainism was given little less encouragement from the rulers. Okay, especially the famous rulers like Ashoka. They in fact adopted Buddhism but not Jainism. This was also served as one reason why it declined, why people showed very less interest in following that. So, though Jainism advocated equality of men, it did not do away with high and low positions in society. So, they said always equality of men, but they could not influence people to do away with the unequal practices in society. There were inequalities among people, but Jainism never, it always used to say be equal, but how? That they never showed. So people never showed up interest again. During the Gupta period and in later years, Hinduism once again became popular. So during the Gupta period, Jainism suffered a major setback because Guptas again revived Hinduism. They wanted the Vedic religion to come back. So Jainism could not survive during the Gupta's period. So thus Jainism remained restricted to few places in the country, and thus you can consider it as a very less spread, and it got declined slowly.